So this elderly Tibetan monk comes up to me after a workshop, and he said, I need to apologize. And I said, why? And he said, when I first heard about you, I thought, what do these Westerners have to teach us Tibetans about nonviolence?
Mary and Everett first met in 1963 when Everett gave a talk about his experiences in the South with Martin Luther King Jr. Within a year, they were married and a social action partnership was forged.
We met under King's aegis, and now, post-retirement, we're involved with the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan exile community. But it's really framed by those auspicious beginnings and continuations.
After the invasion of Tibet in 1959 by the Chinese government, His Holiness the Dalai Lama escaped into exile. Following the escape of His Holiness, thousands of Tibetan refugees followed him and thereby creating the first exiled Tibetan population. Each year since 1959, more and more Tibetans have escaped into exile, finding a temporary home in India, and the community is now more than 100,000 strong.
I don't know what it is, but I have always been drawn to Tibetans and the Tibetan cause. In terms of being a community that values religion and education, in terms of being a community that really cares for its own. Not all exile communities do that.
Under the Chinese rule, Tibet has faced unprecedented repressions, torture, death to the extent that almost 1.2 million Tibetans out of a population of 6 million Tibetans are known to have been killed. However, even after 55 years of repression, Tibetans are still resisting and continue to hold to the Buddhist principles of nonviolence. In 1995, Mary and Everett took a trip to Tibet as a culmination of their interest in the story of Tibet. However, what waited for them in Tibet was a surprise.
Our first day in Tibet proved to be a really difficult day. It so happened that it was on my 55th birthday, which should have just been the most exciting thing in the world. I'm 55, I'm in Tibet, I can't believe I'm here. So we went to see Samye Monastery. And to get there, you have to go from the hotel to the river. You have to take a boat across the river, and then you have to take another car to get to the monastery. So our guide, who was Tibetan, arranged for that, the taxi that took us down, for him to come back at a certain point. So we went in and we looked around, and it was beautiful. It was nice to see that. And then we came out, no taxi. And we waited, and we waited, and we waited. Now, it was several kilometers to the river, really too long to walk. Fortunately, there was a bus there. It was in November, and people from the countryside had finished their harvest, and so they would go around making pilgrimage to all the different monasteries. So our guide said, all right, well, let's just jump on the edge of their bus, and then, we can get a ride with them back. So we did, and about 10 minutes later, they came out, and they were furious that we were on their bus. And this big, burly guy is physically trying to pull me off. Fortunately, I'd had some training in nonviolent resistance, and I was in front of a pole, and I put my arms around the pole. So, he still could have done it if he'd really tried, but that was a bit of a deterrent. And we go down to the river, and there's two boats, and we get off first, and we go to this boat, and they go to that boat. They don't want to have anything to do with us. But it turned out it was our boat that was going, so they had to come over, and they were really scowling at us and whatever. So eventually we made it back to the hotel, and I was in tears. It had just been a horrible experience. Once we got out of there, there was a period of processing this. Like, what do we make of this experience? Why was our experience with the Tibetans in Tibet so different from our experiences outside of Tibet? There's probably no one in Tibet that hasn't been touched by the abusive situations of, having your country occupied and sometimes having your relatives killed and beaten and whatever. So it's a population that's really been under siege. And the Dalai Lama has said, and most Tibetans agree, to resist only nonviolently. They've resisted in every way they know how. And it's not working. So what are you left with? You're left with frustration. You're left with rage. You're left with all this stuff inside that you have no way of getting rid of because you don't know how to make it better.
After their trip to Tibet, they had an audience with His Holiness the Dalai Lama where they shared their experiences inside Tibet and suggested to His Holiness how their work in active nonviolence might be able to provide some solution to the Tibetans.
When they came here, they explained about their interest and what they've been doing in the field of nonviolence. And immediately there was a very good and warm rapport between His Holiness and them. His Holiness immediately responded by asking them to maybe educate more Tibetans about how you can practically put into practice nonviolence in an effective way.
And then we told him what we'd experienced in Tibet and what we were suggesting. And he got very, very excited and he jumped out of his chair and he said, yes, 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 we must have this, we must have this. So that was the beginning in 1995.
At the behest of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and through the Central Tibetan Administration, the Gendlers were sent to various Tibetan settlements, schools and monasteries to give seminars and workshops on active nonviolence. Through them, the Central Tibetan Administration also invited Dr. Gene Sharp, world's leading expert in nonviolent action, and Colonel Robert Helvey to give high-level seminars to the Tibetans in exile.
It was tiring, but it was a very, very exciting thing to do. So that's what we've been doing, giving seminars for years and years. But it was frustrating because every time we would give a seminar, people would want to learn more. There were two of us. We had our lives back in the United States. And so we would go home and we'd come back the next year and they would send us to someplace else. And right from the beginning, we felt that this needed to be lodged in the Tibetan community, that it was not our job to be doing all of this, in addition to which physically it's impossible. There's too many people, too many places to go. So we kicked around a whole bunch of ideas, but finally came up with the idea of starting an NGO that would be lodged in the Tibetan community and who would continue this work.
With this goal in mind, in 2007, Active Nonviolence Education Center, or ANEC, was formally institutionalized in Dharamsala with a Tibetan-led team of trainers and researchers.
One of the keys of the power of nonviolence is the realization no dictator can effectively carry out policies unless people obey. Obedience is the heart of the power of the dictator. The power to refuse is every individual's birthright. And kids practice it from the earliest age when they shout and scream and how can that be connected to a whole social movement that looks for ways to say to the dictator, we do not follow orders? That is really the essence of the whole nonviolent struggle, and to connect normal feelings and reactions with disciplined tactics is really what nonviolent education is about.
Anak, I think, plays a real crucial role, you see, in the Tibetan community, in that our main responsibility is to transform the mindset of people, you see, from the violent, aggressive nature that human beings often tend to be, to really sort of peaceful, peace-loving, non-violent, human beings. So that's a real crucial, it's obviously a very difficult task. But then we derive a lot of satisfaction, very deep satisfaction that we have at least started, you see.
I had just come to Princeton, New Jersey to assume my responsibility.
Nimila loza chunzi la yo ene niento dui nini jaga le ene nga payu chando ndogoni tangaran chacho ena chidan da sewe shime le du samal ta kal tadu chi ma ton ta kas tele thaju mambo jo ha ko masra ngarang dujunya kar sewe shime la ya de ta yinji minji ni nganzo chuna lo rago ya andin rawo chi ngun zingi ra gandhi jin rawo yo ene ta koran ki hindu chulu to ni koran pe la sha andin rawo chi chodra yimba ene le tari sajon te juni ni sewe shime la de tadu chanji mai ba ne tele thaju rada rimba mambo shi yo ba ni thaju dinso trene ni nganzo ki ni siwa genji ni ndra nganzo gani ta mandi wi shung ta miman de ba ma ka wi thaju dinso ki juni ni mima dinso ki ni sama ki dosa chiti to ni nibati wa ena ni lilabo to ni ma pa tu ya.
That's enough for the overview.
And later on, when Anak really came into existence, then again the CTA has really continued their very strong support, inviting us for workshops. One small example is whenever the Department of Education conducts a training for teacher trainees at SARA, they always make sure that Anak is given at least 3 hours to facilitate a workshop. Whenever the Department of Information and International Relations has an important group of people, you see, and they always invite Anak to give talks. That way, I think the CTA has, without the CTA's cooperation, I think Anak would never have reached where we are today.
You guys having a rich information of nonviolence, so thank you very much for giving all the us about us, give information about nonviolence, and thank you very much for supporting us, and hope we will meet again, and wish you both have a long life and happy life. And also, thank you very much for Anak.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Verena, how do you feel?
I feel fabulous. I just feel I'm high. Who needs marijuana? Who needs any of that stuff? I am just flying in the sky. This is our 19th year of doing this, and so far this is just at the top, and I'm sure there are places to go from here, but I don't know what they would be. So I'm happy.
What I continue to find moving here is the engaged reaction of the students. This is really a matter of life and death, communal life and death for them. And all of a sudden, the strategies and the tactics of nonviolent struggle are current, not just historical. They're what these kids from Tibet will take back with them as they return to Tibet. So it's been very moving, and there's continuity, and we don't pretend nonviolence has all the answers. Listen, violence backed by hundreds of billions of dollars a year doesn't have all the answers. So we struggle. But it's exciting, it's alive, it's engaged.
First of all, I actually want you to appreciate and recognize Gendler couples, long time working on the nonviolent strategic action plan with the Tibetans everywhere in the Tibetan communities, in the schools, in the monasteries. So that is a great contribution on the first hand. And then secondly, we had a discussion about how we would like to go forward. And then I also like to mention here that even right now, although nonviolent strategy is a plan, it is not in the school curriculum, but otherwise we always have a teaching about the personalities like Gandhiji, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, and of course His Holiness, and their contribution towards nonviolent techniques, that they have employed for the resolution of conflicts everywhere. So this has been already there in the Tibetan school curriculum.
And don't get pulled into the marketplace?
We had been, as I mentioned, looking for ways to get this institutionalized somehow in the Tibetan community, because that's the only way that more and more people can learn about it. And we're especially concerned about children, the young people who are coming up to the next generation. So 2 years ago, we met with Sikyon, and we had actually written a paper that has been published called Universal Nonviolence Education. And the idea was to train people in not only in these techniques and strategies of nonviolent strategy, but also to make people aware of the history and the religion and the culture, so that they would then know what they're struggling for. I mean, this is your community, and you're part of this community. And so we gave a few workshops on that. Initially, we had thought that it might be a plan that after graduation from grade 10 or grade 12, that maybe all the students would live together for 2 or 3 weeks and have this in kind of intensive training. But that proved not to be really viable. So last year, in our meeting with Sikyon, he said, the 2 foundations of the Tibetan exile government are democracy and nonviolence. We should put this in the schools. And we went, yay, this is a great idea. So it's beginning to happen. There will be a small beginning of it next year, but a real commitment on the part of the community to educate their children in nonviolence. It's always difficult to add something new into an already jam-packed curriculum. But we think that this is a really incredibly important thing, that a whole community is making the move to say our children should be taught about nonviolence as a way of struggling against injustice or struggling for something that they believe in. So it's really an exciting thing that the Tibetans are embarking on.
What we wanted to do right now is wanted to send an announcement circular to all the schools to observe for this year, let's say, 1 week of nonviolence in the school with a lot of different activities. And then we are in the process of collecting and compiling reading materials, so that will go to different school grades, and that will be distributed in the schools when that is done. And then eventually these will be woven into the Tibetan courses or the Tibetan textbooks. So that may take a little while, but this is how we are planning right now.
All the global community shall have to survive, and no one is willing to die or meet to total destruction. At this moment, the scale and the power of violence become immense. The entire globe can be destroyed if there is some big struggle in the world. So only the non-violence is a alternative for survival of the entire small planet Earth. I remember at this moment that one of the last statements given by Martin Luther King the Jr., just 4 days before he was assassinated, he has said that we have no luxury of choosing between violence and non-violence. The alternative remaining before us is non-violence or no-existence. So this is very true. Now the choice is between non-violence or no-existence. So therefore this is immensely important for the entire globe community.